Hey guys, my name is Jack Ward, and for my presentation I chose OSHA Standard 1910 Subpart 146, Permit Required Confined Spaces, specifically pertaining to the attendant duties outside of these confined spaces. My objective is pretty simple. I want you as an employer to understand your duties as it pertains to the responsibilities of attendants for permit required confined spaces. Basically, I want you to know what these attendants are responsible for when they're monitoring the outside and inside conditions of these confined spaces. Attendants need to be fully aware of the hazards that may be faced during entry, including information on the mode, signs or symptoms, and consequences of the exposure. Now, these hazards can range from anything to carbon monoxide exposure to flooding to even animal control. Attendants need to be aware of possible behavioral effects of hazard exposure and authorized entrance. If a certain chemical or fume down there is going to create a mood change in an authorized entrance, the attendant needs to know the signs of that and be able to identify it. Attendants need to continuously maintain an accurate count of all authorized entrants in the permitted confined space. Now picture it as confined space entry permit, a typical one, and circled is where the authorized entrants would list their name and ID or roster number, and it's pretty typical of all confined spaces. At all times, the attendant must remain outside of the permitted space until they are relieved of duty by another attendant. And this is pretty key. The attendant needs to be aware of the outside and inside conditions of these confined spaces and be able to track the authorized entrance within them. The only time an attendant may enter the confined space is if there is an emergency and one, they have been properly trained and equipped for rescue and also authorized to perform this rescue by the employer, and two, they have been properly relieved by another attendant or supervisor. So they can't just rush in, someone else has to be monitoring the outside as well. Attendants need to be able to communicate with authorized entrants as necessary. Now picture it as a simple walkie-talkie headset system they can talk through, but it can be even simpler than that, even just being able to talk, to the guy a few feet below you inside this space. Attendants monitor activities inside and outside of the confined space, making sure it is safe for all authorized entrants. Attendants must order an immediate evacuation for a few different reasons, and they need to be quick with their judgment on this. One reason for immediate evacuation of all authorized entrants is if they detect a prohibited condition. Now, this could be a rise in, toxic levels that could cause the entrance to pass out. If the attendant detects the behavioral effects of hazard exposure in an authorized entrant, they're allowed to call for an immediate evacuation. And this goes back to them being able to identify these behavioral effects. The third reason for immediate evacuation is if the attendant detects a situation outside the space that could endanger the authorized entrance. Maybe that's an approaching storm that's going to cause a flood. There's people outside causing problems. It could be a range of things. The fourth reason is if an attendant cannot safely and effectively perform all the duties they are required to perform. Maybe they're not trained well enough with chemicals that might be come in contact by the entrance. Maybe they're just tired on the job. It can be any reason. Attendants must summon rescue or emergency services as soon as they determine that authorized entrants may need assistance escaping that confined space. They got to be quick on their toes with these judgments because, depending on the chemical, these guys could face serious harm. The attendant must be able to following action when unauthorized persons approach or enter a permitted confined space while entry is underway. Obviously, if entry is not underway, they're not going to be on the job and not going to be there. The attendant first needs to warn the persons that they must stay away from the confined space. Maybe that person just kind of walked into the wrong area, just tell them to turn around and kind of remove them from the area. Second, the attendant needs to advise the unauthorized person to leave that area immediately. They're not allowed to be there, and it's the attendant's job to kick them out. Not by force. If you got to do that, you call the police. The third step is after they're removed, you need to inform both the authorized entrants, the people inside of the confined space, and the supervisor that an unauthorized person had entered the permitted space for whatever reason. Attendants need to be able to perform non-entry rescues as specified by the employer's rescue procedures. Now, there can be varying forms of outside rescue, but pictured is an advanced series hoist system that's hand operated and can also be attached to an engine. Finally, the attendant must not do anything that might interfere with their primary duty to monitor and protect the authorized entrant. Pictured as a guy sleeping on the job. Obviously, as an attendant, you can't do that. If you're asleep, you can't perform your duties. Thank you.